This is Research Like a Pro, episode 310, Disclosing Use of AI in Genealogy Writing. Welcome to Research Like a Pro, a genealogy podcast about taking your research to the next level, hosted by Nicole Dyer and Diana Elder, accredited genealogist professional. Diana and Nicole are the mother-daughter team at FamilyLocket.com and the authors of Research Like a Pro, a genealogist guide. With Robin Worthland, they also co-authored the companion volume, Research Like a Pro with DNA. Join Diana and Nicole as they discuss how to stay organized, make progress in their research, and solve difficult cases. Let's go! Today's episode is sponsored by newspapers.com. Well, hi to all of our Research Like a Proers.
Hi, Nicole. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How about you?
I am doing well, and I'm feeling so accomplished because yesterday I sat down and I spent 4 hours writing my research up. All my Klein research, I got it into a draft and it's almost done, except for I need to add some DNA parts to it. So it's going to take a little bit longer. But you know what the hardest thing was with writing that report?
What?
It was consolidating the first two reports for my background information because I wanted to give enough of the background so people could understand what was going on with this case. But man, trying to take two full reports and put them into like a page or two of background is really hard.
That sounds like a good use for AI.
Okay, well, maybe I should have tried that. Actually, maybe I'll try that today and see what it gives me.
You should compare the results because that's one of the really strong points of chatbots like ChatGPT is taking a document and providing a summary of it.
Oh my goodness. You know what? And here I am working so hard on trying to get just the appropriate things in there. Okay, I'm definitely going to try that and use that for comparison because that will be really fun to see what it can come up with.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that'll be fun.
Well, what have you been working on?
Oh, my KDP for my certification portfolio. Just been working so hard on it, ordering lots of records, getting ready for a research trip that I'm taking. So I'm just gung-ho on it right now.
That is so fun to get deep into a research project. And I know you've sent me a few messages that you're finding some newspaper articles about our ancestors, and now you're having to start to learn a little bit about Indian Territory records because they moved up to Oklahoma when it was still Indian Territory.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying the locality research for this because it's a little different, but there's a lot of records out there. They're just not in the usual places.
Right. It is very different. Well, I'm excited to see what you're going to discover and to read your KDP once you've turned it in.
I know. I'm excited for you to read it.
Well, let's do some announcements. We have our Airtable guides available on our website as PDF downloads. We have the Airtable Research Logs for Genealogy, the Quick Reference Second Edition, and Tracking DNA Matches with Airtable. So if you've been struggling with Airtable, these guides really are very helpful in just walking you through all the different features. And then we are excited for our next Research Like a Pro webinar series offering, and that will be by our friend and colleague, Mark Thompson. He is a graduate of the Research Like a Pro DNA study group and author of the blog Making Family History. And his title is Who is Grace Brown's Mother? This lecture is about confirming Anne Hayes as the biological mother of Grace Brown, and it will be a 3-generation study tracing a matrilineal line back to the great-great-grandmother Grace Brown. Grace was born in England and died in Massachusetts. So topics there will be England and DNA. Our next Research Like a Pro study group begins August 2024, and we are very excited for that. I always love choosing a new research objective for these study groups, and I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet, but it's going to be a good one. And then we have our AI workshop, which will be held July 29th to August 1st. And if you'd like to register for that, make sure you check our website. There may be a few spots left for that. We have coupons for our study groups, for our courses. So join the newsletter so you get all of the information about our deals. And then upcoming conferences, we are looking forward to the Professional Management Conference. This is put on by the Association of Professional Genealogists. And this will be a virtual conference, and it will be held September 19th through the 21st.
It'll be fun to participate virtually. Today, we're talking about artificial intelligence and how it can assist us with our writing. The question often comes up, if we use an artificial intelligence chatbot to help us with writing, is that allowed? Do we need to disclose that we've used it? And how would we cite that? So, all of these questions I really wanted to find the answer to. So, I did quite a bit of research a month or two ago and just tried to decide how I felt about it, and I found a lot of information out there. And in using the chatbots myself for different writing projects and different tasks, I've kind of come to a few different ideas of what I think would be good to do. And so I'm excited to share those today. There's a blog post you can reference that I wrote called Disclosing the Use of AI for Writing Assistance in Genealogy. And we'll be doing this in 2 episodes. So we'll be covering that blog post. This episode will be the first part of that. So this is kind of a new frontier using AI chatbots for creating written content. The last year or so, it really just burst on the scene, and everyone's trying to figure out, all the schools and things are trying to figure out how will we allow this or not allow this, and what rules and regulations will we put in place. And all of us people who are reading content out there often think to ourselves, wait a second, was this written by AI or by a human? So all of those things cause us to have some uncertainties and unknowns. And organizations that once prohibited the use of large language models for research papers are now allowing them, as long as authors are fact checking the output and attempting to cite potentially copyrighted materials that are included in the output. For example, in 2023, the International Conference on Machine Learning prohibited the use of large language models, or LLMs, in their call for papers. But then in 2024, they are allowing them as a general purpose writing assist tool. But they warn that authors should take full responsibility for the contents of their papers, including content that could be construed as plagiarism or fabrication of facts. So, this conference suggests that large language models are not eligible for authorship. So, we'll talk a little bit about some of these issues. So, the answer to the question, is it okay to use AI to help with our genealogy writing? It might depend on the audience and the use of your written product and whether or not you're going to publish it. In genealogy, sometimes we might publish in a society's newsletter or a journal, periodical, and editors of those journals or periodicals may have policies about the use of artificial intelligence, generative text models. So we need to be aware of any policies like that if we plan to publish.
That is such a good point, that maybe there are 2 different ways to look at this if we're just writing our own research report or if we're going to submit a case study to a journal. So I love that idea of really thinking about our audience and the use of our written product. Well, I think that this is coming to the forefront for schools everywhere and universities and colleges, because we all know back in college you had to write a lot of papers and it wasn't always fun, it wasn't always easy. And so let's talk about this idea of students using AI chatbots. So students really need to consider if their teachers or professors will allow the use of AI in their writing. So say, for instance, if a student is learning how to write an essay, that whole idea of taking your thoughts and getting those down on paper or on the computer screen, then it's defeating the purpose of the writing assignment to use AI. And if the student is taking a test or having their writing abilities evaluated, then using an AI chatbot is probably cheating.
Right. That's so clear to see that, like, my 13-year-old who has a lot of writing assignments, he's learning how to write, that he shouldn't use AI tools to write his essay for him. I asked his school what their policy was, and they said they don't allow students to use it in the school, but they aren't giving any policy yet on whether or not students can use it at home. But I think the teachers are telling them, you have to write this yourself and not use AI to write this, obviously.
Yeah, it really does defeat the purpose, because there is something about learning how to put words together, and it takes practice, and you just don't do it naturally usually.
Yeah, it's a skill to be learned. Well, what about genealogy writing that is being evaluated? So you went through accreditation. If you're writing a 3-generation report for accreditation, would you want that to be written by an AI chatbot?
Absolutely not. I treasure my report for accreditation because I sweated over every single word and phrase and sentence and paragraph. And I have used AI to do some writing, and I don't really particularly like the way that it comes out as well as when I write it myself. So, yeah, I would definitely not use it for the actual writing. Now, maybe there's some portions of it that it could help with, but not for putting it all together myself.
Right. And especially where that writing is being evaluated and the judges think that you wrote it. If you had an AI chatbot generate part of it for you and didn't disclose it, or even did disclose it, they might not accept that because they want you to write it. Or maybe you're working on certification like I am. BCG asks that portfolios are the applicant's own work and not reviewed by anyone. So if a large language model generates much of the text for your portfolio, then it's not your own work anymore. And so it's something to think about if you're doing writing for ICAP Gen with their accreditation program or with BCG doing certification. As far as I know, BCG, they had an article in their recent onboard about AI tools, and at the end of it mentioned that they don't have a policy about it.
And ICAPGen does not have a policy either yet. And, one of the things with accreditation is that four generation report is your first step, but then you have your exams, and the final exam is writing a report yourself in a 4-hour project. And so if you have not had some practice and really honed your skills on writing a report, it's going to be really difficult to write a report in that 4-hour final project. So, you're going to be tested on your skills. And I think part of the value of writing a report or, your KDP, your kinship determination project, is learning the skills to write and get your ideas out there. Genealogy is not necessarily easy to write about. And so you really have to practice and learn how to do that. And so a chatbot would really, erase that skill that you're going to learn.
Right. Yes.
Well, let's talk about taking credit. And we have Genealogy Standard number 62 that states we should not assume credit for others' words and ideas. So, because AI chatbots are not human and cannot be authors or contributors, the question still arises. Do you need to give the AI chatbot credit for contributing words and ideas to our writing? Well, Mohammed Hosseini, David B. Resnick, and Christy Holmes, the authors of The Ethics of Disclosing the Use of Artificial Intelligent Tools in Writing Scholarly Manuscripts, say that if you don't give credit to the LLM, or large language model, you're claiming credit for work you did not do. And Elizabeth Schoen Mill says when we use generative AI to create text prompted images or narratives, the same expectations exist. We do not take credit for what we did not create.
Right. So it's tricky because do we give credit to the artificial intelligence, which isn't an author because it's not human, or not? Well, it sounds like we can't take credit for other things' work either, right? So we shouldn't take credit for it as our own writing, but then we still have to figure out how do we let people know that it's not our writing? And that's the question that really got me started with researching this, is how do you give credit to it? Because clearly we shouldn't take credit for it. We didn't do it ourselves. And at the same time, do we even want to take credit for it? Because like you said earlier, often the text that's generated sounds weird to us. It doesn't sound like our own style.
Yeah, so then I think we have to decide how much of that initial offering that AI gave us do we actually end up using? Or are we changing it so much it just becomes our own work again and we use it as something to get us started?
Yes, that's so true. And I think that's how a lot of people are using AI tools right now, is as a pre-writing tool to help them brainstorm and outline and come up with some ways to say things. And then they take some of those words, put them in their own sentences, and create their own paragraph. So
Right.
if you do that, how do you decide that? How do you disclose that? It's tricky, right?
This is complicated.
Right? It's kind of like you're talking over your writing project with a friend, then you write it yourself. Do you cite that you talked about it with your friend? Probably not.
Or if you had someone edit your work, do you cite them as an editor? I don't think I have ever cited anyone as an editor who's looked over my work and given me suggestions.
Right. And then sometimes in the NGSQ articles, you'll see like a list of acknowledgments and the first footnote section that talks about these people helped edit or whatever. So it just kind of depends on the publication or the venue that you're going to be sharing your work, I guess, if you will include if you had somebody edit it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right. Well, now we have a word from newspapers.com. This episode is brought to you by newspapers.com. Discover your mom in the newspaper when you search newspapers.com. Find the stories that made her who she is today by searching the largest online newspaper archive. Newspapers.com makes it easy to find your mom, grandma, and others in the papers. Search more than 945 million pages from major news titles to small town papers. Uncover birth and marriage announcements, obituaries, photos, and much, much more. Explore papers dating back to 1690 or as recent as last month. Newspapers.com is used by millions of people every month for genealogy, historical research, and more. Find something you like? With newspapers.com, it is a snap to save and share articles with family and friends, or attach them directly to your ancestry tree. Use promo code FamilyLocket for a 20% discount on your subscription. That's code FamilyLocket and celebrate the stories of a lifetime with newspapers.com.
Thank you. Well, let's talk about this idea of genealogy writing commissioned by ourselves. So, most of the time, genealogists are not writing for teachers, except if you are in a family history degree program, like through Brigham Young University, or a certification course, like you are in. Usually, as genealogists, we are writing in order to keep track of what we've found. Perhaps we want to share a report with a family member or preserve family information for future generations. I know that I am often just writing a report to myself so I understand what my project held and make conclusions and bring everything together. And sometimes we want to post our report online or put a proof argument out there when we feel like we have proved a relationship. And I have often put these out on Family Search or uploaded them to Ancestry. So these reports to ourselves and proof arguments posted for the information of others are not commissioned by clients or being tested by anyone. So the use of artificial intelligence generative text models for these is probably fine, provided we're giving the models the information we want them to use instead of asking them to come up with information on their own. So, for example, I am writing a research report right now. I've done all the research myself. If I'm having AI help me to put together a paragraph, perhaps about a census and all the information in that, then that probably is okay.
Yeah, agreed. And just an aside that you mentioned I was in a certification course, but I'm not. I'm just working on my certification independently. I don't want people to be confused. But there are certification courses for genealogy out there that give you a certificate.
I see the difference because those are getting graded, and yours will be rated eventually, but just a different format.
Right. It's just not a course. So that's
Yeah.
confusing. I know a lot of people get confused about that. Like Boston University, they have a
Mhm.
certificate course, right?
Yes, I think so. And isn't there one through the National Genealogical Society? I think they've got some kind of a course that perhaps you get a certificate for, but don't quote me.
Yeah. So it's just the difference between becoming a certified genealogist and getting a certificate from a course. Anyway, just I know there's people out there who probably thought, "What is that?" And now I'm just letting you know.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I have had people say, "Well, I have a certificate." And now I'm a certified genealogist. And I said, well, did you go through the board for certification of genealogists? And they'll say, no, we just completed a course. So there is confusion. So it's good to clarify that.
Yeah. Well, what you said about writing for ourselves is really helpful to kind of distinguish, when we write something for ourselves or to be posted online or for those in the future, then of course that's okay to use AI tools. And we would just probably want to mention that we've used them. Well, what about genealogy writing commissioned by others? When we're writing client reports or maybe a handout or syllabus material for a society and things like that, then a writing is commissioned by a client or another group. And they've asked us to create the research report or syllabus because of our qualifications and skills in writing and in genealogy. And our personality, skills, and experience give our writing a unique style and tone. Flip side, large language models have their own style and tone, and some of them can be described as generic and robotic or flowery and extra wordy. So if we hand over the creation of our client reports and syllabus materials to the AI chatbot, then our unique authorship, knowledge, style, and tone can be lost.
That is so true. And I think that we're getting better at recognizing when someone has used AI to create some writing. I know at first I didn't really notice that. Now I look at it and I think, oh, that was AI that wrote that, because, I've had enough experience with having it write things for me. So I think there's really something to be said for that personal style. So let's talk about this idea of authenticity and personal style. So these LLMs can be trained to use our own style, but they still cannot be experts to the level that we have become experts in our area. So in talking about writing, we have to be careful that when we use an AI chatbot, it's not watering down our expertise or causing our unique style and tone to be lost. It's so important for us to review any of this writing generated to make sure that it reflects our unique experience and knowledge that we've developed over time. We can also use prompts or GPTs that we have trained in our style.
Right. So that's one of the things that ChatGPT allows you to do is create your own personal GPT. And if you train it and tell it with these special instructions that it's supposed to always remember, it might be better at following your own style. And so that's something that we can all try. Well, I was writing a video description for one of our videos for YouTube channel, and I often will use ChatGPT to help summarize the videos from the transcript of the video. So when we record on Zoom, there's a transcript, or when I upload it to Vimeo, there's a transcript generated. So I can take that transcript and upload it to Claude by Anthropic, which allows uploaded files, and ask it to generate a summary. So one time I was doing this and I uploaded the video transcript and said, write a summary of this. I went back and forth with the chatbot to refine the summary. At first, I asked for the summary to be more concise. And as a result, some of the specific details that were important for the description were stripped out, and it just kind of had general statements. So that's not how I would have written it. I always like to include some specific details about like the tools that are covered in the video and the specific methods that we're talking about. And the title of this particular video was Documenting Lines of Descent from a Most Recent Common Ancestor to a DNA Match. So the oversimplified, very concise description that was generated by ChatGPT says, this video is from the Research Like a Pro question and answer series. So that was good. And talks about how to show family connections using DNA tests. So that was very generic and broad. It explains why it's important to keep good records of family history, especially when using DNA. So that also is just extremely generic. The video uses examples to show how to make your family tree research believable and accurate by including proper evidence. It stresses that good evidence is key to understanding family links through DNA. So you can tell that that was just really not very good at all. It really doesn't let you know anything about what the video is about other than it's about family history, and DNA tests.
It's basically taking the same idea and restating it 4 different times with different
Exactly.
words.
Yes. Well, I liked that it was simple and not long, but it was so watered down that it didn't accurately describe the video's contents. So if I had written it myself, it would have been much more specific with suggestions and methods we talked about in the video. So I went ahead and refined the paragraph through additional prompting of the chatbot and said, give me specific examples of tools and methods used. And then I fixed the first sentence to include that the documenting is not just family connections in general. I wanted it to say this is specifically about when you're documenting the line from a DNA match to the common ancestral couple. So the final result was a little bit longer, but I think it's better because it talks about exactly what the video is and isn't just a very high level generic thing for like a 4-year-old. Yes, I'm going to talk about family connections.
All right. Well, should I read what you actually came up with?
Sure.
We can see how much better it is. So, but it is much better. In this presentation from the Research Like a Pro with DNA study group, Diana Elder AG talks about how to document family connections from DNA matches up to the most recent common ancestral couple. She explains the need for proof arguments and tables to show these connections clearly, like in Nicole's study on Bathsheba Tharp Dyer. Diana points out that showing parent-child links requires a lot of documentation. She suggests including this information in reports or appendices to manage the large amount of data. She also mentions using ancestry trees or the researcher's website to share these documents, which helps save space and makes it easier for readers to see the evidence. Diana emphasizes the importance of solid evidence in making genealogical research believable and trustworthy.
So you can see some of that was preserved, and I didn't write this all myself. I did still have the chatbot write it. I just edited the first sentence and told it to include specific examples.
Yeah, that was much better.
Yeah, so you can get it to do what you want. You just have to give it really good instructions. And so if my original instructions had been more than summarize this, it probably would have done better. So it's kind of a mix of like your own getting used to providing clear instructions and prompts, as well as checking it and making sure it sounds the way you want, and then doing any final edits. Well, I wanted to share an example from a history professor at St. Mary's University. She had a blog post about her experiment using AI tools to edit sentences and paragraphs. And she found that if she didn't provide careful oversight, some meaning was lost. And she said she's very wordy. And so she wanted the tool to help make her sentences less wordy. But she found sometimes that some of the important meaning would be lost when that happened. So she had to be careful not to just submit her whole paragraph or her whole paper and then say, make this more concise or less wordy, because she needed to review each sentence to make sure no meaning was lost. So I think the idea there in her blog post was that AI can be a very patient and thorough editor rather than like a one and done tool where you just upload a rough draft and then get a perfect final draft as your output.
That's a really great idea if you wanted to just rewrite something a little bit more simple. I guess you would just get better and better at using your prompts and teaching it what you want it to do.
Exactly. And I think that's where the 20 hours of experience comes in. When we were in the Steve Little course with NGS, he mentioned that a few times, that the first 20 hours of playing with the chatbot is kind of like your learning curve. And once you've gone over the 20 hours, you'll start to feel a lot more comfortable with knowing how to use it and how to get the output that you want. So it's just a matter of practice and being able to describe what you want your writing to be like. And sometimes we don't know how to describe it. We just know how it sounds. And that's actually a good point, that you can provide examples to the chatbot, and that can really help it to undergo the machine learning that it needs to in order to give us what we want.
Well, this has been such a fun discussion. I think that AI is fascinating, and sometimes I think we don't want to bother with it because it's too much work to learn how to use it appropriately. But it's like anything in genealogy. We just have to reach out and start learning and practicing. And then I'm sure down the road we'll think, how did we ever live without AI? Because it has helped us so much and we've just learned how to use it. So thank you for writing this blog post and doing all the research to bring things together. And I'm excited for the next episode where we talk even more about AI and using it in our genealogy.
Right. In the next episode, we're going to talk about how to actually acknowledge if we've used it and when we need to do that and how to cite it. So we kind of brought up all the issues of that this time and kind of went over, when is it okay to use it? And then next time we'll talk about disclosing it and how to cite it.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and we will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening. We hope that something you heard today will help you make progress in your research. If you want to learn more, purchase our books, Research Like a Pro and Research Like a Pro with DNA on Amazon.com and other booksellers. You can also register for our online courses or study groups of the same names. Learn more at familylocket.com/services. To share your progress and ask questions, join our private Facebook group by sending us your book receipt or joining our courses. To get updates in your email inbox each Monday, subscribe to our newsletter at familylocket.com/newsletter. Please subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. We read each review and are so thankful for them. We hope you'll start now to research like a pro.